Hey guys, Ethan here, writer, musician at Itis, and also, I guess, YouTuber, sort of now. Really, I just made this channel because I want to discuss environmentalism, because I don't think it's being discussed in any kind of productive way anywhere I look anymore. And I'm going to talk about three basic concepts that I think have destroyed the environmental our even our basic concepts of what environmentalism should be about. And so, to begin with, I want to talk about identity. And I think this is really important to understanding our immediate environment and how we perceive wilderness and how we perceive civilization. And so those two things are going to come up later. But first, I want to talk. I'm going to discuss kind of three dualities that I think are a problem here. First, I'd like to say I get a lot of my inspiration from some of the dissident right thinkers here on YouTube, but also leftists like Mark Fisher. I think his capitalist realism is one of the most brilliant ideas that I've had the pleasure of exploring. I think he's dead on. So in my last video, I talked about colonization and gentrification, and I want to talk about the colonization of identity first, and how, in order to colonize our identity, to colonize human consciousness, we are being split into two impossible identities. So, first of all, we have a local identity. This would be our cultural identity, right? This is our immediate environment. When we think of environmentalism, this is a so first we have our local, tangible community. This is our immediate environment. But now we are being asked to have a global identity. And this poses a huge problem. We are being asked to be global citizens by organizations like the World Economic Forum, Council on Foreign Relations. The mainstream media is pushing this idea of the global citizen. We are to be cosmopolitan. And if you're an environmentalist, this is not possible. You cannot be an effective environmentalist when you are trying to occupy an environmental space, and this is the space of gentrification and this is the corporate identity. So a good example of what a local and global identity is Burger King. Burger King has a localized identity in your hometown, most likely, because it's fucking everywhere. But Burger King also exists everywhere in Europe. It exists in Asia. So this corporate identity is a standardized, universalized, it is a universal identity. And in order to have this identity, it essentially has no identity at all. It is sterilized. It is a blank slate that can be accepted by a local culture, a localized identity, or a localized culture, let's say in Japan, a localized culture in Motley, Minnesota. It doesn't matter. Burger King is a non-entity. It exists, the corporate identity exists outside of time and outside of space. It is a slippery, amorphous identity. So, when we are being asked to be global citizens, and then we are also being asked to fight things like gentrification or something of that nature, to fight the environmental fight, how is this possible? The only way this is possible is to give in to the corporate identity, to lose, to sterilize oneself of their culture. So, when one goes to a city, if you were to look around in the city at any given city block, in any given city in America, it would be very hard to distinguish what city you are in unless you were aware of the particular vegetation, perhaps, or maybe architectural style of certain residential places. But on a street full of corporate businesses, it is always going to be the same in any city because that is the purpose of the global identity. And this is the gentrification. This is the corporatization of the human experience as we know it. Now, this same phenomenon, let's put it this way, this is the colonization, the process of colonization. I talked about in my last clip, and I want to go into more about colonization 2.0, which is the standardization, the colonization of the human identity, to reduce the human identity to a non-local universalism. And the way that this is being accomplished is through technologies of disembodiment. And these technologies, although they allow us to communicate, they break up our spatial, our they break up our spatial identities, right? We can transcend space and communicate immediately across the globe. But in doing so, we have to use the corporate gadgets that are given to us, the algorithms that are designed by these corporations. And so this system of corporatization, this is the kind of capitalist realism part of my brand of environmentalism, or really just the environmentalism that I think is most useful. I think capitalist realism is a great way of looking at this. I had this moment one day where I had this strange awareness that everything in my apartment, all of my technology, my clothes, everything is corporatized. Everything is capitalism. There's no escaping it. But we've reached this strange period where capitalism is now sort of more of a techno-feudalism, because increasingly it is the technological mediums that are encroaching into the human identity. So colonization 2.0 to me is the colonization of human identity and human consciousness. So this is kind of the way to think of this is what gentrification does to ethnic neighborhoods, or just any neighborhood that has its own kind of local thing going, its own culture. This is happening at the level of the individual now. All right. And the right loves to talk about meme magic, but this is dark magic. If you look at Gen Z humor compared to, let's say, the humor of like I just watched The Jerk with, I can't remember his name, but I mean, you watch some of these older comedies and there's such a wide array of humor. Like check out, Monty Python, for instance. Gen Z humor is very standardized. It is increasingly narrow. It is meme humor. And what memes are, they have a purpose. They can portray information in a narrow. An image can become very powerful and viral, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you can see how these social media and these technological worlds that we occupy all the time now are very finite, narrow worlds. And this is something that is happening across the culture as we become increasingly corporatized, as we become part of the technological system. We are being closed into cyborg identities. Paul Kingsnorth talks about the machine in this way, and I think he's dead on. The machine is not necessarily concerned with profit anymore. I don't think the machine is concerned with ideology. The machine is concerned with the machine. And humans are essentially the substrate that is building this larger organismic machine that exists solely to produce more machines. This is the god, the colonial god being birthed. That is how I envision this. This is, we talk about AI, but I don't think we need a sentient AI for this to become its own sort of organismic uh, force. That this it already seems to have a a notion of self. So when Elon Musk talks about the AI race, how dangerous it is, that this could destroy us all, So we gotta build the AI before the next guy does. This isn't a nuclear bomb. We could unplug the AI. And a guy like Elon Musk is highly intelligent, I would think. I hope so. He certainly seems to play the part. If this is such a dangerous issue, instead of putting the manpower into this space race to an AI, overlord, we know that there's far, far more iterations of internet technology that is accessible. I mean, Internet 1.0. There's people talking about Internet 3.0. But for whatever reason, smart tech, the Internet of Things, is our only choice. And this is because this version of the Internet, this version of smart tech, is organismic. It seeks to combine with all. It seeks to infect. It is colonization on steroids. When we think of what the Internet of Things really is this is the substrate, the kind of if you were to think of it as a sort of technological fungus, this substrate is slow. It's like cordyceps infecting our appliances. It's affecting our cars. So when we build our electric cars, we love to talk about how wonderful the electric cars are. Even though we're already having issues when they talk about how this has anything to do with green technology. There are lawsuits. I cannot remember which tribal council or which tribal government it is, tribal nation in the Southwest, but they are battling a mining company who will be mining for lithium batteries to produce to create this electric car, this EV revolution. And the reality is, the EV revolution is going to require the largest mining expansion in recent history. There is nothing green about this technology. But more than that, these aren't just electric cars. I've ridden in a Tesla. I rode in a Tesla. And as I was riding the Tesla, I noticed on the little screen as we were speaking, everything we were saying was being was popping up on this screen. And the more we drove, I realized that this Tesla is just a smartphone on wheels. Smart tech is a specific kind of technological, it is a specific iteration of technology that is designed to extract data. In my last video, I mentioned SEL and how education is this smart tech is being integrated into education. So what we are producing is a society in which from birth to adulthood, data is constantly being mined. The human experience is being colonized and mined. John Trudell talked about this 20 years ago. He was speaking about this. Um, the human experience is being mined, and thus it can be used for to predict revolutions, to put down revolutions, to create revolutions, like let's say in the Arab Spring. And so really what we're dealing here is something beyond political. This is a system that for now is being used for many different purposes, but it seems to produce ideations that at all costs prevent the technology from being reversed. The machine is looking out for the machine. A lot of the, like Elon Musk's companies weren't even necessarily profitable. They're being propped up by military contracts and that sort of thing. So this technology is wedging itself closer and closer into the human experience, to the very so much so that if you've ever noticed, when I was using Facebook a lot, I'm not on Facebook anymore, I started to think in Facebook statuses. You know, I would think to myself, oh, it's a great Facebook status. And these are very strange things. So this is the world of our civilization. This is a finite technological world with finite technological rules, boundaries. This is what civilization is. It is a colonial enterprise. Blake, the poet mystic, William Blake, he spoke of London. He talked about the dark satanic mills of London, and he was seeing this process occurring late 1700s, I believe. But he made an observation that the mountains, the rivers, wilderness is human. And what he meant by this is that consciousness is imbued in wilderness. And so this brings me to my second point. We have to begin to understand that our concept of the city, especially, but technological civilization, is virtually a different world than wilderness. Wilderness is infinite, or at least it's as close to infinite as you can get. When you walk down a sidewalk, you are walking on concrete. When you walk down a path, a grassy path or a dirt path out in a forest, there are innumerable organisms that are taking part in the process of there's saprophytic organisms, there's things that only feed on decay, there are symbiotic organisms. And then another way of thinking of this infinite quality is when we look up at the stars, this sense of the sublime, right? This when we see these mountains ranges, and it's incomprehensible almost how beautiful it is. And this is the sublime. This is our immediate experience of the infinite. It's almost too much for the mind to comprehend. And I do believe that what our technological civilization now is doing is it is almost diminishing our ability to perceive, to create a relationship with the sublime. Instead, we see the sublime and we take some selfies with it, and then we post it right back to the technological substrate, right? Everything we encounter is going right back to social media. Our identities are so rooted in this technological machine, as Paul Kingsnorth put it. This so if we're going to approach environmentalism from a real way, we need to virtually step outside of that machine, and we need to understand that this is the same machine that turned humans into agrarian tools, that created the slave trade. This is the same machine that committed the genocide, that waged a genocidal war against not just Native Americans, but indigenous tribes all across the globe. Because the machine, we need to understand these two worlds. One of them, nature, acts upon its own. It is a composite of innumerable organisms acting on their own behalf, often in symbiotic relationships, sometimes not, sometimes predatory, but there is a balance. The colonial machine can only see nature as an adversary. So when we have these kinds of environmentalism, where, don't worry, you know, we're going to save the wilderness with the very technological system that destroyed so much of our wilderness to begin with. Um, this is insanity. Environmental Our environmental experience is rooted in our local identity. If you want to understand an environment cannot be global. That doesn't make any sense. A global environment is not an environment at all. Just like a global citizen cannot be a local citizen. These things do not make sense. If we are going to fight the war against the machine, which we, as environmentalists, this is the task at hand. The technological system has grown so powerful and so pervasive that we don't need particular human overlords for totalitarianism to unravel. We are already living in the totalitarian machine. We are instituting it in our schools from childhood to adulthood. Our identities are shaped by algorithms. We are converted into data that the machine can then use to control our behavior, to omit experience, literally to omit experiences, human experiences. I mean, a simple algorithm can redirect our behavior so dramatically, and we have lost sight of this. The fact that we have a phrase like "go outside and touch grass," we are so far gone at that point. The environment that I know in northern Minnesota is very specific. It is not a global environment. It has nothing to do with the Amazonian rainforest. And you can make these silly abstract arguments like, oh, well, there's the butterfly effect, and whatever you do around blah, 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 up here somehow affects South America. And maybe you could talk about like monarch migration, bird migrations. But this is not the kind of like Hegelian, uh, sort of like strangely hermetic way of viewing interactions. There's not some space in between the environment of Minnesota and the environment of the Amazon that we can somehow play with. In effect, it is the same problem. In trying to create the to bring the global environmentalism to the local environmentalism, erases the local completely. We end up with nothing. We end up with computer models. We end up with climate change as the all encompassing task of environmentalism. The flying squirrel has nothing to do with the Amazonian rainforest. All right? And a bunch of billionaires changing the IMF or something like that, fucking with the monetary system to support some kind of, philanthropic organization that will rewild land somewhere across the globe isn't going to save the flying squirrel in Minnesota. In Minnesota, here in northern Minnesota, the environment is sand moraines. There's wetlands, a lot of peat bog. These are specific environments that require specific action. And the only way we are going to be able to address the issues in these specific environments is by first building a relationship with those environments. We have to become local organisms. And unfortunately, in an urban environment, it's too late. The modern city is a non-local, as I talked about in the last video, it is almost at this point a disembodied environment. Wilderness, I mean, there's arguments from from the academic environmentalists that wilderness shouldn't even be a concept. There's no such thing as wilderness anymore. There never was, because there was always indigenous people living in those lands. They were never uninhabited. They were never empty. That's a ridiculous argument that has nothing to do with environmentalism. The jack pine grows, reproduces through forest fires, right? It needs an immense heat for the cones to open up. The white pine, when it's young, is eaten by the white-tailed deer. They love it. White cedars grow in boggy environments. Bog laurel likes to grow around swampy environments, near sedge meadows. These are not abstract concepts. These are tangible, real environments. You don't just touch grass there. You become part of the environment. We have to build relationships with our local landscapes. This idea of global environmentalism is a corporate scam in order to gentrify, to in order to create a system of gentrification across the entire globe. That is what we are looking at with this kind of green climate movement, the new Green New Deal sort of environmentalism. It is something that I think both the dissident right, capitalist realism, I think all these things have their place, but I think first and foremost, environmentalism is a is building a relationship with your local specific environment. Forage for plants, hunt, get out, understand the behavior of the animal, of the animals in your environment. This is a trick that is being played across multiple dimensions of the human experience. You can be local and global. Environmentalism can be local and global. This is a technological idea. The only way these things can occur is through more technology, through the Internet of Things entering the Internet of Biology. This is an attempt to merge the globe into a smart machine. Only then will they declare the environmental problem over, because we have essentially integrated the smart matrix across the globe. We have standardized every culture. We have colonized everything from the genome to the smart city. And this trick is going to be played on us over and over again. You must be a global citizen. But also, worry about gentrification and stuff too. Maybe keep, like, I don't know, a restaurant that sells, some ethnic food or something. Meanwhile, wilderness does not operate this way. The gentrification of wilderness will occur through the modern green movement. It is not a movement that is concerned about the flying squirrel. It's not concerned about wolves, the wolf population in northern Minnesota. It's not concerned about the dwindling moose population. It's not concerned about the amphibians that are dying off all across the globe. What it is concerned about is standardizing. It is standardizing nature, and what you will see is a continuous effort towards a synthetic nature. That is the end goal. A system of corporatized synthetic nature in which the individual aspects of the environment are not important. What is important is that we reach a global consensus, a monetary consensus. I believe the word that they use is stakeholder capitalism. So, I just wanted to end this broadcast with a poem, since I do like to write. And sorry, guys, I'm not a high-tech guy. I'm not interested in great aesthetics, or anything like that. So what you see is what you get. So this poem, I don't know. I'm just going to call it People of the Land. Where eyes are swept towards heaven, above the blackest royals of willow, carcosa, indigo, and infinite. The hunter poised in waiting the arrival of man, the northern dipper guides the cold wombs of mothers. No membrane to parcel out the night from the dream. You stand already here, Hyperion halls in hoarfrost. The crystal silence of tamaracks where lowlands, snow-capped creeks in mazes of bulrush, furrowed scales of leather-leaf burgundy as ancient wines. The crimson brush of high country cranberry. In the dream, the coyotes yammered. You slip-walked down the roads of dead enterprises, yet all your history vivid, frozen in timeless stillbirth. Neural diamonds branch on boreal wings toward some new moon, some new stillness, a reckoning. How the jingle of ancestor bones rise in brumal fog, you are among ghosts, among family. The black spruce, the white cedar, all the elements of a pale northern bone. 10,000 years ago, they cracked your femur. The marrow sizzles on hot flint. May the steam rise in hereditary vortex, helix of a people of the land. If we are going to become environmentalists, we must become people of the land. We can't afford to play in abstractions, in technological models. The forest is waiting for you. The forest is out there. Go alone. These ideas of things like camping, recreation, the fact that we see wilderness as a place of vacationism, as recreation. Wilderness has nothing to do with those things. It's not recreation. It's nature. It doesn't need you to be nature. You don't need to give purpose to your place in nature. Nature is waiting for you to simply exist there. Instead of going camping, next time you think about it, skip the tent, take your bedroll, go out. Maybe you need to build a fire, maybe you don't. Maybe it's a full moon. Lay there, watch the stars, listen to the owls, listen to the yammer, the coyotes, listen to the dead silence, and just be in the wilderness. It is not an abstraction. It is not a place to go camping. It is not a recreational activity. Nature is the mother of all. And until we recognize that we have been kidnapped, we have been ripped from our identity as animals, as humans, into a cyborg cage. Until we understand this, we will be duped into increasingly ridiculous, corporatized, soulless, technological versions of environmentalism. The fact that we have the concept of environmentalism at all means we have become so disconnected from the roots of our own origins. We have fallen from Eden. No, we don't need to camp. We don't need to drive ATVs out there. This isn't some place to go take selfies to post on Instagram. Nature is all. From the cosmos to the single grain of sand to your identity. That is nature. And this is the environment that we are missing. It has nothing, we can't learn this in a university. We can only return to nature when we can break the dualisms that separate uh, that separate consciousness from consciousness. Nature is alive. It's not a system of objects to be named. It is a matrix of life to be experienced. And that is what I hope to cover on this channel. So hopefully we can return, we can reestablish a relationship with our own identities, with our own origin and our future. Thanks, guys.